Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I am Abby Erickson. I'm the Chief of the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to the global launch of the SVRI Forum 2024. Connect, share, and learn. Thank you for joining us today from far and wide. I am very honored and excited to host today's global launch for the upcoming SVRI Forum 2024, organized by one of our long-term partners, the Sexual Violence Research Initiative, of course, SVRI. 20 years since its foundation in 2003, and now with over 6,800 members, the SVRI is one of the largest global networks for advancing research on violence against women, violence against children, and other forms of gender-based violence. The SVRI brings together a diverse group of actors aiming to achieve a world free of violence against women and children through improved practices and prevention programs informed by evidence through its signature conference, the SVRI Forum 2024. The next forum is being held in October in Cape Town, South Africa. And today we are joined by a fabulous panel who will speak more about the forum and how it creates a vibrant, informative, and safe space for researchers, practitioners, policymakers, donors, survivors, and others to share and learn about new research, developments, and innovations. I truly hope you'll be inspired to join the forum with all of us next year. For nearly 3 decades, the UN Trust Fund has been a leading global grant provider dedicated to supporting civil society organizations that aim to end violence against women and girls. We have not only invested in these organizations, but we are also invested in their research, monitoring, evaluation, and practice-based knowledge. Through our experience, we have seen the transformative power of the SVRI Forum, not only in terms of what is cutting edge in the field, but also in promoting connection and dialogue across various forms of knowledge and evidence, and across different regions, and across practice and research. We're very looking forward to having you at the forum and continuing this dialogue. Next slide. Some very quick information about today's event. Our webinar will be around 60 minutes. This event is being recorded, so you can access all of the important information and the excellent discussions that we're having today. We do have interpretation available in Spanish, French, and Arabic. Please refer to the taskbar below and click on the globe icon to select the language. And lastly, for now, the audience is muted. Please feel free to use the chat function to send in your questions or your comments so the SVRI team can respond to them. Okay, now that we've gotten through all the practical information, let's get started. Our program today is packed with excellent speakers, and I look forward to the discussions. First, we'll hear from Dr. Claudia Garcia Moreno, who is a founder and leadership council member of the Sexual Violence Research Initiative. Claudia has led the team working on violence against women at the World Health Organization, which included work on measurement and epidemiology, interventions research, and development of guidelines and tools for the health sector. Claudia also coordinated the WHO multi-country study on women's health and domestic violence, and she has worked on the prevalence estimates. Claudia will be speaking about all the things you need to know about the exciting SVRI Forum in 2024. And then afterwards, we'll bring together a fabulous group of panelists to discuss how their experience at the previous SVRI forums has contributed to their work. We have Professor Rachel Jukes, who is a founding member of the SVRI Research Initiative and Secretary of SVRI from 2006 to 2019, before the formation of the Leadership Council. She is the Executive Scientist for Research, Strategy, and Intramural Units at the South African Medical Research Council, and an honorary professor at Wits University. Rachel is a medical doctor with public health specialist training who has led South Africa's research on gender-based violence for over 3 decades. Manuela Balé Ahogo is a regional research advisor for the Sub-Saharan Africa at Together for Girls. Manuela provides violence against children study country support, research, project management, and technical support to research partners in sub-Saharan Africa. She is the recipient of the SVRI Forum 2019 Best Young Researchers Award in Cape Town, South Africa. Manisha Mehta is the Program Director for the Women's Rights Program at Wellspring Philanthropic Fund. In her current role, she oversees programming focused on advancing gender justice, including supporting feminist movements and funding efforts to end gender-based violence and advance reproductive equity and economic justice. Manisha has over 20 years of senior leadership experience in the social justice field, especially in gender justice. And we have Yoni van de Sand. She is the co-director of the Global Secretary of the Men Engage Alliance, which is a global coalition of NGOs focusing on engaging boys and men and advancing gender equality. Yoni is a passionate and driven women's rights and gender justice advocate with a passion for challenging injustices through feminist systems transformation. And then for our closing today, we have Elizabeth Dartnell, the Executive Director of SVRI and the SVRI Leadership Council and Board. Liz is a health specialist with over 20 years of research and policymaking experience on health systems, mental health, violence against women, and violence against children. So I'm really looking forward to everyone's interventions. And without further ado, Claudia, I will hand over to you.
Thank you, Abby, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm really delighted to once again be here telling you a little bit about the SVRI Forum. First, just a little bit about the SVRI itself. We are a feminist, women-led nonprofit organization based in South Africa under the leadership of Liz Dartnell. We were established in 2003, recognizing the inequities and the lack of resources and attention to violence against women in low and middle income countries, and particularly to research in low and middle income countries. As Abby has already mentioned, we work to achieve a world free of violence against women, violence against children, and violence on the basis of gender inequality more broadly, by supporting ethical and rigorous research that is used to improve prevention and response programs, and we have a focus on low and middle income countries. The SVRI now has over 10,500 members, and that includes researchers, policymakers, practitioners, donors, activists from around the globe, and that really represents a very significant growth. We work across these 4 pillars that you see here. I won't go into the details, but obviously building evidence through particularly the SVRI Research Grant, which you may be familiar with and for which there's an annual call. We have the strengthening capacity pillar, and it's one of our core areas to increase the number of researchers from low and middle income countries that are leading research and leading programs, promoting partnerships, and we do that in multiple ways, including through the forum, and influencing change through global research priority agenda setting and other activities. Moving on to the forum, every 2 years, the SVRI has hosted the SVRI Forum, which has been going since 2009. And the 8th one next year will be hosted in Cape Town. It's always been an in-person conference, and we are expecting, based on the previous one, over 1,000 delegates. And we gather over 5 days to connect, share, and learn. And I invite you to get into the website and look into all the detailed information. I'm just going to give you a quick bird's eye view of the 5 days. During these 5 days, we usually start with a day on capacity building through pre-conference workshops, then 3 days of the conference itself, which is abstract driven, and then the Friday, which is dedicated to participant-driven events, or what is generally known as satellite events. And we made a decision some forums ago to keep that to the Friday, so that really during the days of the conference, delegates focus on the conference content. The forum also offers spaces for exhibition stands, for networking, as well as space for well-being, for self and collective fare. And in addition to the strong scientific underpinnings and quality that we hope is there in the presentations, it's also a space to nurture relationships, to have fun, to dance, and to ignite joy. It's a very fun conference. So the forum offers some space for exhibition. It has abstract-driven panels, which integrate both practice and research. It has the dialogic panels, which were launched for the first time at the last forum in 2022. And that's designed to challenge us and to provide a space for debating sticky issues in the field in a very safe environment. Then we have the 5-minute presentations, which has been a popular feature and replaced originally the posters. And then next year, we will also have a few, we'll bring back a limited number of poster stands by request of the 2022 participants. Now the next slide, thank you. The forum is committed to principles of learning and collaboration. And we have always, from the early days of the forum, been committed to diversity, to equality. We've also always been very cognizant of the power dynamics within research. And we seek really to come together and to bring that people across disciplines and across areas of work to collaborate and to expand networks. We place an emphasis on nurturing young and emerging researchers through bursaries, through a mentoring for presentations program, and also we always have a forum prize for the best young researcher presentation. Next. This is just some quotes from what some of our delegates have said. I'll leave them on for a minute. I think, apart from the fact that it has become really a go-to meeting in the fields of violence against women and violence against children, it is also still, in spite of the size, the growing size, I think we have managed to maintain that element of safety, support, solidarity, collaboration. And I think that's one of the things that people value very much about the forum. Next, please. Why South Africa? Historically, we hold every second forum in South Africa because that's where the team is located. And organizing a conference of this scale with a small team is very taxing, as you can imagine. And it does provide a bit of respite to the team and ensures the team's sanity, and also allows us to provide a consistent quality to have it in South Africa every other year, so that we can make use of the local resources and the local supports. Being at the International Convention Center, as it says there, will provide access to a lot of different spaces, as well as the beauties of Cape Town. Next slide. So the forum themes, they are developed in a very collaborative way, partly through the feedback that we got from the Forum 22, as well as other multiple processes and collaborations and consultations with the membership of the forum and with other partners across the globe. We try to make this process as inclusive as possible, and these are the themes. You can look at them in more detail in the website, which we will provide at the end. So I won't go into detail, but it's about understanding the different forms of violence against women and violence against children, prevention and response programs, advancing the science through looking at new methods and measures and innovation in that area, a specific focus on sexual violence in childhood and on perpetration and perpetrators, and then integrating mental health, self-care, and collective care. Now, coming to the abstract submission. First of all, delighted to announce that we will be opening the abstract submission today, but I don't expect that anybody will be submitting today. But the link, we will share the link in the chat, and the abstracts are due on the 31st of January of 2024. So you have some time, but as we know, time flies, so it's good to start planning. Abstracts can be submitted in English, French, and Spanish. Please do follow the guidelines in terms of the length and the content. We have different modalities of abstracts for research. We follow the traditional, aims, objectives, methods, results, etc., recommendations. We also emphasize, we also welcome abstracts on programs and practice-based knowledge, knowledge from evaluations, monitoring and evaluation, how information is used for improving programming, and really candid sharing of both intended and unintended consequences of programs, as well as practice-based theory or new methods or evaluations and approaches. The 5-minute presentations, which I mentioned already, you can select when you submit your abstract to have this as your modality. It's a very short format where you have 4 minutes to present with one summary slide displayed behind you. And 4 minutes seems very, very short, but actually you can say an awful lot. And these have been very successful in the past. And as mentioned, we will have a few limited poster boards as well. Once we receive the abstract, we will send it out for peer review by 2 reviewers. It's blind review, and the things we look at are relevance. Is it addressing a key debate or a key theme? Is the purpose clear and well presented? Are the methods sound? Is the data analysis and interpretation appropriate? Are the findings significant? Do they have clear policy implications or clear conclusions? And what is the contribution this is making to strengthening the field? We emphasize that, and again, in terms of equity and inclusion, we are very much wanting to ensure that if the research is done in an LMIC, that people from that country, even if it's led by a northern-based organization, we want to see presenters from the countries where the research took place. And we try to also not have one presenter too many times, so to make sure that we include as many people as possible and bring in new institutions, new researchers. Moving on to the workshops, the next slide. Once again, we will have a variety of workshops, and they're already up on the website. And these are based on really building skills and knowledge on those. And most of them, there's a few new ones, but a lot of them are, repeats based on what people have asked us they want to see again. And important to know that you have to register separately for them. We currently have 13 confirmed, and a few others may be added. Moving on to the next slide, an important date. So we will be opening early registration towards the end of February, and then standard registration opens on the 1st of March. There will be discounted rates for LMIC delegates, and this registration includes access to all the sessions, to the events, tea, lunch, and conference materials. If you do want to have a stand, you do have to apply separately. So please do consider, and also if you want to have participant-driven events, the earlier you plan them, the better, because there is usually, it's quite a competitive. Then my last slide is really just to talk about how can you support or join the SVRI forum. There are multiple ways in which you can partner with the forum or sponsor and if appropriate, have the logo included in the forum materials. And these include things like supporting the bursaries for young researchers or for people for low and middle income countries, supporting the self-care and well-being activities, supporting translation. We want to reach as many people as possible, but translation is always a very costly element. So support for translation is welcome, and just an overall contribution to the conference, which is in a way ideal for the team, because it gives us more flexibility to fill gaps where we see them. And of course, if you bring many participants from the same organization, that has also been a way of establishing partnership with the forum. So I think I'll stop there. I'm sure you may have questions, but please feel free to ask them to us. Please look at the website, which provides a lot more detail. And we really hope you can join us in South Africa and look forward to this forum. You know, each forum gets bigger and better than the previous one. So we are looking forward to October 2024, and look forward to seeing you. And with that, I'll hand over to Abby to kick us off on the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. That was an excellent overview of the SVRI forum, and I'm already getting excited for 2024. I'd like to just welcome those of you. I see many people are introducing themselves online, so just again, welcome to you. We're going to start our panel discussion now, and I would like to just kick us off quickly with a warm-up round to get us started. I'd like to hear from each of the panelists first before we dive into the SVRI forum and your experiences. In the bigger picture of our global efforts to prevent violence against women, girls, and children, what are you most hopeful about? Manuela, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in the launch of this great forum. I have great hope that violence against children and girls can be prevented. And I would like to give the example of sub-Saharan Africa, where I am from, where I'm based, and where most of my work occurs, that there has been an increased attention to the issue of violence against women and girls. There's also been increased research, data-driven action, and advocacy in countries in the region. And on the data front, the national surveys on violence against children have been carried out in many countries in East and Southern Africa. This provides a framework for understanding the scale of the multiple forms of violence against boys and girls, and really identify the vulnerabilities among boys and girls. And that data and other robust data in the region have guided countries to develop and implement national action plans to end violence against children. And in this specific region, I want to cite the remarkable journeys of Kenya and Eswatini, where statistics recently have shown a significant decline in the forms of violence. So understanding what these countries have done can serve as a model for other countries in the region. I'm also hopeful to see that there are increased movements led by survivors. Their voice is key. Their insight and lived experience are very important to complement and enrich the data that we have to end violence against children now and forever.
Oh, thank you. That was wonderful. Yoni, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much to the colleagues at SVRI for inviting us to join you here in the lounge. And thank you, Abby, for inviting us to share some thoughts on hope. I thought it was not an easy question in these times, I have to be honest, but maybe building on Manuela a bit, what gives me hope is as we look at ourselves and the broader community as activists for a better world, I think we are ongoingly improving our understanding of the root causes of this violence and really finding that in the bigger global macroeconomic system where few have a lot of power, a lot of resources, and very, very many more have very little. Or it reminds me of what Bell Hooks was calling the white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. And I'm hopeful in the sense that we are really building movements across issues, the feminist movement, anti-racist movement, the climate justice movement, coming together to end all forms of violence, and very often being youth-led, and that gives me hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoni. Wonderful. Rachel, let's hear from you.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here at the launch of the 8th Forum. I've been with the SVRI all the way through the journey of our forums, as well as the broader journey of the SVRI. And I see how far we've come in the field, and it makes me incredibly hopeful. Manuela's mentioned the knowledge base, and it's really grown enormously over the last 2-3 decades. We now know so much about prevalence from almost every country in the world, as well as drivers of violence, and this increasing body of knowledge about what to do to actually prevent violence being perpetrated. And I think that that's something that's a huge area of hope. Obviously, there are big gaps, but we would all be out of business if there weren't gaps. We've got to carry on. We've got to carry on identifying them and focusing what we do. And the other thing that really gives me hope is the people. Massive growth in the numbers and capabilities of the people providing care and support and prevention programming, as well as researchers. And particularly, I want to give a shout out to the young researchers. And I think the forum's been able to really play a vital role in supporting and strengthening the group of people that we have who are passionate programmers and researchers in the field, and of course our policymakers and donors. So I think there's very much to be hopeful about. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel. And Manisha, over to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's a little bit difficult to go after all three of the other panelists, only because they've said a lot of what I wanted to say. But I think what gives me hope, having been involved in the field for so long, one is we've just evolved tremendously from not knowing whether violence could be prevented to seeing actually evidence-based programs that show that violence can be prevented in a relatively short period of time, given the issue. The fact that many of these programs actually can be scaled up, the fact that more donors are coming into the space, there's increasing alignment between donors. We're seeing much more collaboration and coordination across the field in terms of what the gaps are, both in terms of research and programming. I think there's a real movement, as several of the speakers right before me said, to ensure that the most marginalized are not left out, to look at how does violence affect specific communities that we haven't seen before. And I think the other part is to recognize that we're moving more and more to a deeper understanding about how violence is linked to many other issues, that it is really from a very intersectional frame, and that violence that we used to think of maybe as separate in, let's say, state violence versus interpersonal violence is actually linked in many ways. So I think, I've been to the SVRI, I think almost every conference except perhaps one. And in that period of time, to see this type of evolution in the field really does give me hope, even as we see sort of an increase in the, of violence during the pandemic, et cetera. But I think we have a lot to be hopeful for.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. And I think, building now and digging a bit deeper to the overview that Claudia provided, and really picking up on so much of what you've already brought up in your responses around what you're hopeful about. I'd like to move into our second round. And Rachel, I'll start with you. You have, of course, been involved in the forum in so many ways over the years. How do you think that the SVRI forum has influenced the direction or the focus of research in the VAVAC field? And I guess also continuing the hope theme, what are your hopes for the future of the SVRI forum in terms of fostering collaboration between researchers and practitioners and activists? So over to you.
I think we've come, been on a really interesting journey. And I remember thinking back to the SVRI we had in Thailand, where Alessandra Guedes gave a keynote speech talking about linking the violence against women and violence against children agenda. And we basically went from that point trailblazing through our forums to say, let's not think about these forms of violence as being isolated and separated. They're inseparably linked. And so we need to understand them as a part and parcel of the same thing. And we need to start thinking around prevention and programming and support in a unified way. And I think that was one incredibly important example. Another has been the focus on men as perpetrators, and that was something that the SVRI has played a really big role in bringing the men into the field. And I think that's been a tremendous, important sort of intersectional position. And we obviously now, over the years have these very valuable partners, Men Engage and all of the partner organizations. But I think being able to bring men centrally into the violence against women field has been incredibly important. And I think the other thing has been prevention. And the forum has solidly focused on prevention and given time for prevention, and has really not only launched some of the findings of big studies like the SASA study, but has brought the people who drive and deliver interventions to prevent violence against women and girls to the fore within the forum meetings. And I think that that is so incredibly important. And one of the key things which makes the forum different from other spaces has been the way in which the researchers, donors, policymakers, and practitioners are brought together and really positioned so that the knowledge from each of the different bases can be shared, can be built upon, and we can build an understanding, because we all are so incredibly important for our work towards ending violence against women and girls, and our work towards ensuring that there is support for all women and girls who have experienced violence. And I think that it's really important that that we're positioned to look at that. And the forum is the perfect place for it. It's a perfect place for building understanding between the different players in the field. And we have so far to go. We've spelled it out. I was looking at some of the workshops that are coming, workshops on femicide, workshops on measurement. We know that femicide is a relative gap in many countries. We know that we need to revisit the agenda on measurement. We know that we need to learn how to work better with children in their experiences of violence, and as they go forward with the massive problem of intergenerational cycling of violence. And the forum is beautifully placed for being able to start addressing, unpacking, exploring these agendas, and enthusing everybody with the energy to go forward and work in the field over the next few years.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That was really compelling. And I think, you brought up so much, but I do think it is such a unique space where we have so many diverse stakeholders in the room, and that link between evidence, and Manuela, you raised this as well, evidence and in policy making and practice, and also really the role I think that has been evolving around centering survivors and lived experiences, and also bringing forward the practice-based knowledge, and really bringing kind of a rigorous evaluation to looking at diverse forms of knowledge and evidence that are out there. And truly, I can say I have never been to any other forum that has been able to bring all of that together in one place. I wanted to also just, so Yoni, going to you and building on what Rachel has shared, including the point around kind of bringing men into the work on the elimination of violence against women, girls, and children. Of course, Men Engage has been a very integral partner of the forum over the years. From your perspective, what impact can practitioner and really activist voices have in the discussions in these international platforms? How do you see the relationship between research and practice evolving, and the role that the SVRI Forum has in this? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I will underscore some of what has been said already. But I think that the SVRI is both an important space for a couple of things, and I think I also want to share an encouragement for even doing some of this even more and better, and maybe also to those who are here participating in this session and listening in, encouraging in the applications to also make these connections between research and practice-based knowledge. I think the SVRI has been really important to broaden our understanding of what evidence constitutes within the broader research community. That practice-based experiences, participatory research methods that capture practices are really important. And I think this reflects a feminist movement understanding of nothing about us without us, that also enables people with lived experiences to really be at the forum and contribute to the forum. I think what's important, and I know SVRI is picking up this conversation and these practices too, is to think through how do we decolonize knowledge? And how do we decolonize the research agendas? How do we address power dynamics within research agenda setting, within those who conduct research, definitely some with more resources to do so, and to make sure that we set agendas by the people themselves. I think what's really important, and SVRI does this, I think, Claudia, you earlier said, this is a feminist, SVRI is a feminist entity, and it's so important that we are clear and we center activism, because we're not doing research for the sake of publishing. We're doing research to change, to transform, to end violence. And I think SVRI is really important in agendizing that. Let me just see what else I would want to emphasize. I think just to really anchor that SVRI plays that role in being part of the broader feminist movement agenda calling for systems transformation. I want to echo what Manisha said earlier about the deeper understanding of violence against women and girls, and violence more broadly, not being only interpersonal, but also linked to systemic violence, to state violence. I think that is really important. I want to highlight, actually, because Rachel, you mentioned, the how SVRI has played a key role in bringing men into the conversation, men as perpetrators, to the understanding of the majority of violence in general being committed by men. And I think just to share from Men Engaged Alliance's perspective, SVRI has been a really important space to discuss areas of tension. Some of the work on engaging men and boys has historically not been feminist informed or even gender transformative. Some of it had lost track of the contributions to ending violence against women and girls, of contributing to gender equality. And I think SVRI has been a key space where those conversations could be held and have been held over the years. We've had the elephant in the room conversation a couple of years back, where it was something that really kind of exploded in the corridors, and we brought it in and we had a conversation and we talked about what the challenges were. And I think from Men Engaged Alliance, that's where one of the key moments of commitment came, to say, we want to be there to center and strengthen accountable practices in the men and masculinities work. And, even at the last SVRI forum, we had a conversation that brought a lot of people to say, where have we been and how have we done over the last years in making improvements, and where are we today, and what do we need to do next? So SVRI has been that key space for discussing areas of tension, and I think that has been it's really important, and it will continue to be so. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoni. Really, really great reflections. And I think it is important that we have the elephant in the room conversations and the tension points, because we can't collectively move forward unless we acknowledge what's working and address, what isn't working and the tough stuff. And that's also around the power dynamics that you've mentioned that sit within the space of research, and that and the whole issue around decolonizing knowledge and who holds power and what is knowledge and what is evidence, and having those conversations transparently is about feminist praxis. And it's really wonderful to see how SVRI has continued to really move that forward and have that feminist framing in the space of these conversations at the forum. Manuela, yes, Manuela, over to you, of course. Reflecting on your experience as part of the forum's Young Professionals program, and congratulations receiving the Young Researcher and Practitioner Award yourself. How has that shaped your work in the VAVAC field? And from your perspective, what would you like to see at the next SVRI forum in terms of engaging young researchers, young practitioners, and activists? Over to you, Manuela.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you so much. I mean, first of all, I want to say that the SVRI Forum has been a fantastic, empowering, enriching convening. And I felt extremely lucky to have been awarded the Young Professional Program in 2019. That was in Cape Town. And without the awards, it would have been extremely challenging for me to make it, to attend the conference. At the time, I was a PhD student completing my first year, even being based at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, a global North university where my supervisors and friends and other researchers really tried to mobilize funds. I still struggled to identify a consistent source of funding for my research and conference participation, either because my country, Côte d'Ivoire, did not have enough funding to support my research, or because countries in the regions, other countries in the region did not have support from traditional donors in our field. And in fact, during the conference, I only came across a limited numbers of participants from the Western and Central African region. So I'm sure researchers and practitioners from other regions, from underrepresented settings, share the same reality. So receiving this grant allowed me to travel to the forum with peace of mind and engage wholeheartedly with participants with great enthusiasm. And during the forum, I was able to expand effectively my network with researchers, academics, and professionals. I met an incredible group of young researchers from different regions. We shared experiences, learnings. When I started my work, my research focused on physical violence, and after SVRI, I had access to tools and more evidence to actually start exploring the sexual violence. So this was very an important moment in my research as well. Now, receiving the Best Young Researcher Award was an important moment in my career because it was my first conference, first of all. And so the validation of my team's work by experts in the field really boosted my confidence, and also confirmed that there is great research capacity in my country, in the Global South, in the region more broadly, and that my research on school-related violence, I think we touched on the intersectionality, was important and much needed to end violence against girls and children. So it really led me to reflections around, my participation and funding, and, on the need for funding that is initiated and led by Global South researchers and practitioners, especially for studies that are carried out in the Global South. And also the need to strengthen research institutions that regulate and shape the research agenda as well, and to ensure that the research is aligned with the agenda. And that means that we need to bring in the voice of these researchers and practitioners to co-create the agenda. Now, for the next SVRI, what I would like to see, I think first in the selection process, which Claudia described really well, really clearly, it's super exciting. And I think even within the low and middle income countries, there is still a need to be more inclusive. We need to rethink the notion of young researchers and practitioners. Who are they? How do we generate data? So the inclusion of those participants shall not always rely on the criteria from traditional research, because we can generate evidence in so many ways. And SVRI can be a great platform to shape this model, to foster geographic representation, and to ensure that settings such as, participants from rural settings, humanitarian settings as well, can participate. There is a wealth of high quality evidence in the Global South. We've demonstrated with the VAX, with the evidence review carried out by the Coalition of Good Schools, and there are many other examples out there. And young researchers and early career researchers contribute significantly in study design, data collection, etc. But sometimes they lack the recognition, they lack the platform. So SVRI can provide this opportunity to go towards them and identify them and provide them with the support to showcase their work. I want to also see more sessions led by young researchers and practitioners from the Global South, as moderators, as panelists, as organizers, as scientific chairs, not just as participants, bearing in mind, as Yoni mentioned, in the idea of decolonizing the research, bearing in mind the power imbalance between the North and the South, those with more resources, those who lack funding as well. So encourage these platforms so these researchers who sometimes have the language barriers, etc., can speak, share, discuss, and disseminate their work to enrich the global community and learn constructively from others. SVRI aims to catalyze as well this partnership model, and this is fantastic. And I think bringing in the voice of these young researchers and make them interact with their kind of more experienced researchers can create or foster or strengthen this partnership model, which should be based on mutual trust and respect. And this is very much needed to move the field forward.
Thank you so much, Manuela. Such powerful reflections and really very practical advice and input in terms of how you'd like to see things change around, creating more space for inclusion and really recognizing the wealth of expertise and the knowledge that we need to have seen really flourish in taking up leadership spaces at SVRI from the Global South and from underrepresented regions. Colleagues on the line here will know that I spent the last 8 years in the Pacific region, which also had very little representation from amazing researchers and practitioners from the Pacific. And so that has always been at that time in a different life, was a real passion to bring those experts front and center in the global stage, and the power that space can hold for young researchers and practitioners and professionals. Thank you so much. Manisha, we'll close with your question and your thoughts. From a funder's perspective, what makes the SVRI Forum a unique and impactful platform for all who attend? And in what way does the forum help you, in your role within a funding institution and knowledge builder in the field around violence prevention? Over to you.
Thanks. I think it's, there are multiple reasons why, from the sort of the donor side, this forum is extremely useful. First, I think it really, each forum has focused on both kind of what's come, what's historical, as well as what are the current trends, the latest research, the latest debates, etc. in the field. So it's, attending that forum is an incredible snapshot of both where the field is at and where it needs to go. So I think that is first and foremost. I think second, it is an incredible chance for the grantees or partners that we support to come together and not just sort of meet and collaborate together, but actually see who else is out there to make important connections, both in their own countries, in the region, transnationally. One of the most incredible things I think I've seen over time, and this is just because the space is there, is how our partners have leveraged their work by meeting others who are doing similar work, learning about new strategies that they can incorporate, being able to actually highlight their work beyond just sort of the circle they had of stakeholders further than that. So I think that's incredibly important. And then I think the third part is that it's given, the donors, I think, or the funders who've been involved for a while, have really tried to bring new actors into the space, new donors, those that have been funding this work but have been isolated in some ways, as well as those that I think are new to the space and actually want to better understand, well, where can I make the greatest contribution to this field? And so it's allowed us really on both at the forum and in connection to the forum, been able to collaborate, coordinate, align in, I think, important ways to advance the field. I think that it's also connected funders from very disparate spaces. So, I think Rachel spoke about how the violence against women and the violence against children spaces were completely sort of siloed, I think, many years ago. They're increasingly coming together because fundamentally the drivers that drive that violence are the same. So I think those are the multiple reasons which have been very, very valuable to us. And I think the last thing, and just to build on Manuela's point, that I've heard from grantees is that, often they feel very isolated sometimes in the work that they do, which, there's of course hope in it, and also there's trauma associated with doing this work and seeing what you see on a daily basis. And a lot of them have said to us that just coming to the forum has been incredibly rejuvenating and healing, because they see that they're not alone in what they do. So just as a plug, I don't know if there are other donors on this call, but I think for us, being able to support as many partners as we can to go to the forum has been invaluable in so many ways. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Manisha. And I think I do think that even though we're all connected, we're all doing this work, there is so much power in people coming together and being together and learning and shaping and pushing and just feeling a sense of community and partnership and solidarity. And donors and funders have a really powerful role in helping to make that happen, and building upon some of the reflections from the other panelists as well, really ensuring that we've got a lot of balance and that there's representation from where representation needs to be showing up in these spaces as well, and taking a very critical lens to what it means to be feminist and transformative, and bring all of that into these into the forum. I want to thank our panelists. Wonderful reflections. Each of you brought so much. It was a great discussion, very inspiring. I know there's been a number of questions that have been in the chat, and I think many of them have been answered, and a couple of folks have had their hand up. We're not able to open it up for a Q&A, so please do put your question in the chat. And now would be a great time, if there are any burning questions, to please put them in the chat. We just have a couple minutes, so maybe we can take one, if not two questions. And SVRI colleagues, please help me make sure that I'm not missing anything that we have not answered.
Abby, I think we've answered all the questions that we've that have been raised so far, and they've been super. But we do have one from Shruti.
Okay, so hi, I'll just read it out loud. Hi, panelists. This is Shruti from the UN Trust Fund. The SVRI has been an incredible space for bringing practice and research together. We know for a fact that our trust fund grantees have connected with informed networks and alliances that have lasted well beyond the forum. I wonder what more can be done to enrich those connections between practice and research. Why don't I hand that over to Manuela? Can we start with you and then perhaps Rachel?
Yes, thank you very much. To ensure that we bring in, we have the buy-in from policymakers from the beginning of the research. That's really important, that they understand what we do, that they participate in a way, and that really guarantees the use of the data of the research into policies and action.
Thank you. Rachel, any reflections from you on that question?
Well, I think one of the interesting areas might be to spend more time looking at the sort of agenda that practitioners bring and how we can see if we can systematize adding value to that through the forum. And I think it's really valuable that we have practitioners presenting throughout all of our sessions, and we have all the discussion spaces, but I think it might be interesting to see if we can, how you actually add extra value to that, and that might be one of the new ways forward and something for us all to think about.
Thank you, Rachel. We've got maybe one more minute, so Yoni, Claudia, or Manisha, did you want to reflect on that question before I hand over to Liz?
Maybe if I can, just to add that I was wondering if there's a way in which you can track some of these collaborations that have emerged from the SVRI forum. I mean, we know a lot about them through sort of, you know, anecdotal reports kind of thing, but I was just thinking that it would be quite interesting to know more about which of these collaborations have really led to something new, or, you know, to for example, I think building on what Rachel said, you know, there's a lot of experiential knowledge that is ripe for being evaluated more rigorously, you know, and I think there has been that the forum has provided an opportunity to sometimes identify some of these promising practices or programs that haven't had an evaluation, but that sound very promising. And yeah, so I was just thinking it might be interesting for us to think how we can document better what some of these less concrete outputs are from the forum. We'll think about it.
Thank you, Yoni, over to you.
Yeah, it just came to mind is something that Srilata Batliwala said a couple of years ago, that activism without reflection and documentation is risky. And I think that you know, from a practitioner's perspective, I think there's an incredible interest to document practices, to analyze lessons learned, but it also takes a lot of time and resources, and that time and well, the resources more broadly are not always carved out and dedicated. So maybe the SVRI forum can even more be a space where those matches are made between those that have practical experiences and are in need for documentation analysis, and those that have an interest in supporting those kind of documentation processes. That would be wonderful. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Liz, I'll hand over to you. I just wanted to highlight that we've also had you know, some other chat just around the conceptualization of age, you know, what young you know, researchers look like, recognizing that some folks come into this space a bit later. And so just to highlight, Manuela, that somebody listening really picked up on that point from you. Thank you so much to our panelists, to all of you who've been listening. Thank you so much. I hand to you, Liz, for the closing. Thank you.
Thank you. And I really have the easiest and I think the nicest and most wonderful part of webinars is to really just show deep gratitude to our partners that have really engaged with us forever and ever in creating the forum. It's not SVRI-led event. It is a field event. So for that, we have deep gratitude. But I really want to thank everybody here today. It's been incredible. I want to thank you, Abby, for being such a great host. Claudia, Rachel, Manuela, Manisha, for just the great conversations, the ideas that you've shared. We're going to take them all on board, of course, as we always do, and really think through how we address the issues raised, the ideas that have been put forward. How do we use the forum to document the incredible learnings and the spin-off effects of events like the forum that have been co-created by not just one organization, but many people. I really want to thank the UN Trust Fund for helping us ensure that we've got translation and coordinators on this call for us. It's been really great. So thank you to the coordinators and translators, both from the UN Trust Fund and from Bolingo. I want to thank Liesl. Liesl, please put your camera on, who is always the force behind these amazing events. So thank you, Liesl, for everything. You are awesome. I just want to remind you of the really important date that the conference is from the 21st to the 25th of October in 2024. We really want you all to join us. So submit your abstracts. Abstracts are open now and they close on the 31st of January. Just to echo what Claudia said, time flies. So you don't have to rush, but don't forget to submit because it's really important. It's the key way to get onto the program and have your voices heard. So, and there was an important call for ensuring that we have both practitioners and researchers and policymakers and activists engaging with us. So do that through the abstract submission process, and also reach out to us to think about ways we can ensure that those voices are infused. The registration for the conference will open soon, and so look out for that. We will share that through the multiple networks. And just to let you know, this is not the only launch event. We're going to have some regional launch events over the next 3 months. So join us for those. And just to echo again, that this is a place to really create, to share, to network, to learn, and really express joy and caring and collective understandings of violence across our fields and together. To advance and end violence against women, violence against children, violence against adolescents, and to create a violence-free world. So thank you again, and we're going to see you hopefully all in Cape Town.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
And thank you, Liz, for keeping the SVRI
on
track.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.